We are officially live.
We are officially live. Good morning, Miss Nereyda.
Good morning, Miss Lucienda. How are you
Today,
today?
I think today's going to be a great day. Yeah, today is it feels very revealing, right? I think it's because the planets are shifting like since Friday, but like now really shifting into where we're coming to the last of letting go of all of that sludge that we've had since the eclipse,
Okay, I'm
right?
so ready to let go of it.
Oh yeah, yeah, right. Be gone.
Okay.
Right. We've been going through like so much, just so much energy. So
Yeah,
much,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
recently, okay, so what we're gonna do is I'll go ahead and I'll do some announcements, and then maybe you could share out on Facebook, and then I'll go ahead and share out on Facebook, and you give your announcements, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So here at Body Studios, we're going to go ahead and shift our curriculum. The Wednesday classes are $25, and they'll remain spiritual alchemy, but I'm going to list them as clairessence because that's really what it is that we're doing. We've gone into a formal training rather than studying oneness. Now we're all in oneness. We're in this understanding. So now we're in this application. We're going to apply the 12 universal laws in our studies. All right. And then the other thing is that meditation, I'm going to do two different um, styles of meditation. So I'll do my really deep theta healing meditation on Thursdays at 6. And then I'm going to do Spirit channeled it to me. So here we go. I'm going to do, oh yeah, movement meditation 2 or 3 days a week at around 12 o'clock or maybe even earlier. It just depends on how they have me list it. And then Lanisha has a book club. We're doing a book club, the very first book. Yes, I'm excited. And that's going to be on Monday. Let me see what day. Anyway, I'm sending out a big oh, it'll be the second Monday, so the 13th, and that'll be cool. And then on the last Friday of the month, we're doing um, film screenings. We're doing film screenings, and we're going to do documentaries. And then we'll have like mini discussions, and we'll provide snacks and everything. But this is just to show different aspects of like give more perception basically, and not to wash anything, and try to get some accurate information into like where we're at and what our experience is, but we were doing it in a very tangible way, like how is our world reflected in like what we're coming to know, right? How do we navigate it like that?
Are you guys gonna
And,
be conversations afterwards?
well, oh yeah, the conversation is gonna be dope. It's gonna be so
It's gonna
good.
be
Yeah. And I
we
have
need yeah, because
friends.
that's for people who are craving those deep conversations with people and they don't have them in their circle.
Exactly. And it'll be a safe space, and it's super cool. That's what's really nice is that we I went ahead and we played I bought the game disparity I bought the disparity game.
Okay.
And I don't think I'm saying the disparity trap. Okay. Game. And it is a very in-depth, systemic, nonsense, non-systemic. And I didn't about like equity, all right, and racial equity, all kinds, okay, of how the United States is set up and how you live like while you're here, okay.
Okay.
And we all played uh, non-dominant and dominant systemic. That's what your choices are. And so since we had a choice, and it's a very in-depth game because it has a lot of different aspects about like, well, if you land here, then these are the things that you're in, and blah 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 blah. But it takes you into this understanding of how society is working, and it's such a trip. And so there was another person that showed up, and oh wow, and then we had like three. It was me and then two other people, and we sat there and we just kept like going over the game. That put me into shadow work. Woo! Like, oh, look at all that privilege. Look at all
Oh,
that privilege.
I
Oh
can
my God,
totally
look.
imagine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so that was one way, right? That was really cool. And then and it doesn't take much to put you into those understandings, right?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
You're also open and willing, right? Like if you're doing the work or if you're curious or reflective, it could get you there really easily.
Oh yeah, but well, your focus is what's going to take you to whatever you're going to experience next.
Yeah.
So, right? And it could be portional in your mind, it could be moving forward in like who you are in different ways, right?
Yeah.
So let's say you're just focused on work, then that's going to be kind of like what you're going to bring in.
Yeah.
And if you're focused on vacation, then you're going to bring that in. And
Yeah.
so it just kind of wherever you're looking in society or in your tangible. But that's what we want. We want to show people the conditioning and the specific things that get done
Mm.
that produce the propaganda that we get conditioned with, like all of the books, the way that the books are handed to us. That's all okay. So, like, right? So
Oh
it's
yeah.
like, yeah. I was recently traumatized. I know I've been doing a lot of talking.
No, go for it. I love it. I love when we're
Yeah,
this is the
Nereyda.
whole part
I
of
love
it. We're
you so
talking.
much. Oh my gosh. Okay, so I, you know, I have all kinds of um, sensations and knowings.
Uh,
Okay, all right, about TikTok. Okay, and TikTok has given me different perceptions of like all kinds of things, just like life
yeah.
in general, right?
Uh-huh.
And when the funny thing is that like when you're in this self-discovery aspect, you
Uh-huh.
don't see yourself as that person until you see yourself as this person.
Okay, hold
Okay.
on. You don't see yourself as that person like you're seeing on
Right,
TikTok-ish?
the person, well, no, not necessarily TikTok. You don't see yourself as the so the reason that TikTok was so impactful for me, or why it is, okay, it's because I got to see other creators, other content creators that had different perceptions and they had different information, and there was like a lot of legitimacy and
Yeah.
just like running things into like ground, and then seeing how we were getting all the limitations and just different things like that. And so, really understanding that this is like an avenue of misinformation, but it's giving you more perception so that you have a concept and you can go within so that we all become human.
Okay.
Okay. So, it creates this inner connectivity to our mind and to our energy and our oneness. And so that's why we feel all of the energy when people are really going through something, because the world is going through something right now.
It's collective.
It's very
Yeah,
collective. And
yeah,
so we're really feeling it and we're really thinking it. And so it's causing us to go into that self-discovery, that inner world, to
yeah,
where, because like that the external world isn't answering our questions anymore.
yeah. I heard
We're
the other day
seeing,
on the
go
radio
ahead.
too, where somebody was saying on the radio, like, how not our generation, but the previous generation, it's like their way wasn't working. And our generation's trying something different, but the generation after the millennials are like tired of the bullshit. So the person on the radio was saying how the newer generation is gonna bring up a lot of just change and a lot of just growth because they're tired of all the BS that's been done previously.
Well,
But
now we have more information. We have
yeah,
more information. When you learn to do something a certain way
yeah,
and you're reasoned to understand it, like you're given reasons to understand it, and then you look for that evidence without understanding that you're being conditioned to focus in a certain direction so that
Yeah.
you receive only that information to support what you're being conditioned to.
Yeah. But isn't that crazy too? Because it's like in the moment, it also becomes like your what's the word, propaganda? In propaganding yourself?
That's right. That's right. Because
It's like you're not really aware of it, right?
even though it's offered, we're not obligated.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like
And
it's still a
every
choice, but it's
opportunity, go
conscious.
ahead. I'm sorry.
No, it feels like it's still like a choice, even though it's subconscious, which I think goes back to what you were saying of if you something about like if you don't know you, you don't see yourself in the content that you're seeing, right? Not TikTok, but maybe the information being shared. But I think that's
Exactly.
where we're going. But if you know where
Exactly.
you're at, or if you know who you are, maybe like you see the reflection.
Yeah. Well, what happens is I think I could say it in a better way. All right. So when I discovered TikTok, I was urged to go on TikTok and I was
Uh-huh.
very reluctant. And so when I
Yeah.
went on TikTok, it became very I was just playing with the platform. But then I would start watching a little bit. And recently, because like there's been so much information that isn't information that we're getting outside of that.
Okay.
And in that, it's creating this connectivity of understanding between people who would not necessarily have come to any understandings or connection
Okay.
because they're worlds apart in their minds and in their experiences.
Okay.
And that separation had been created. And so
Yeah.
now, with the people who are using this
Uh-huh.
platform that doesn't seem regulated, that seems very open to where the quote algorithm pays
Mhm.
attention to what your likes and dislikes are, but will just feed you things as well. And then
Yeah.
it also has like a for you thing, so you can go over there and then you could do your selections. It was very open. So when this whole return thing happened, the Pluto return for the United States. Okay. So
Okay.
that's going to be for like, we're in that right now. We're having a good time. We're
Having
having a good time. We're having a good time. And that is like the planet of death and transformation and its depth. It's like it's as deep, its core values, right? And it's in Aquarius, and that's like thought. So all of our beliefs are being challenged in a variety of ways. And
Yeah.
so that's okay. All right. So you had asked me before we started about, um, anyway, about all that. So anyway, through watching like a lot of TikTok, all right,
You do like a
lot of TikTok, because I wasn't at first, but then I started to try to understand different things because it was hitting me. It was starting to hit me. The Karen thing came out, and I was like,
uh,
I hate being white. And that brought up a lot for me because I've never wanted to be white. I understand that I'm white now. I can accept I'm white now. I'm okay. I'm okay.
yeah.
I'm okay. But that is only very recent. That is only very recent. That's only after our Earth Day retreat. And everything started to integrate. And it was that big, it was that big eclipse energy. And so these 2 weeks have been very impactful for everybody. And I've just allowed it to integrate. So during that, I was taking in information. And there is this individual who is who's from the upper part of the America. Okay. Or well, I don't even want to call it that. I have trouble now. I have trouble now because you get knowledge and you want to be respectful. And so of Turtle Island. Okay. So of Turtle Island. And so they're in the northern part of Turtle Island. And in that, they identify as two spirits. And so they were talking about going to the UK and having this, just going and finding out about it. And I was really curious because like I
Mhm.
didn't I don't think normally. I think very constructed and conditioned. So whatever I was taught when I was a child, that's my filter. And until that lens gets busted, I have no clue like what else is there. So
Yeah.
as the individual is over in the UK, they are at this church ground, and they're where a monument of Pocahontas is. Okay. And I was like, what? Why is there a monument of Pocahontas
Yeah.
in the UK? I'm not understanding. So I
Yeah.
all of a sudden, I'm getting triggered because now all of my understandings and conditionings that I was taught about Pocahontas and like maybe a Disney reference, right? Because that's like,
Yeah, that's like the big one.
7 p.m. we're going to watch a Disney thing. That
Yeah.
was so conditioned. And so it was just I was in this uh-oh moment, and that
Wow.
was how I was feeling challenged because I knew that things were going to shift. And the individual is taking footage, and they point the camera over at the church that's there, and they say the church burned down and they're not really sure where she's buried here. And I was like, oh, and I felt every fiber of my being
Yeah.
just begin to weep
Oh,
because I'm still not understanding what happened. I'm still not there. Okay.
yeah.
And then the individual sweeps the camera and goes to the statue that they have of her. And
Okay.
it says Pocahontas. And then I don't even recollect, okay, how she's dressed in the statue. Okay. So
Okay.
anyway, there's a link at the bottom. Okay. There's a link to find out more. So I go ahead and I click the link, and I find
Mm.
out, because like, here's how the individual ends the video, that Pocahontas is probably the first and most documented
Mm.
missing and murdered Indigenous woman. And I was, right? And that whole concept was so
Yeah.
much. And that has to do with how fed I was to
Mm.
that story. Okay.
Like the
And
fantasy.
whitewashed, colonized. We're going to believe it this way because it serves us. It doesn't serve everyone, it serves us.
Yeah.
And man,
Mm.
so I push the link, and then I find out that she she was so young, and
Yeah.
she had already had a partner that she was married to in the
Mhm.
tribe, and she'd already had a daughter.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And then it was I'm not sure of all the names, but there was, so whoever that, oh, you can't hurt him, that's not exactly how that all happened. And I encourage everybody who sees this, if you're unaware, okay, but the gist of it, all right. And I don't want to just roll over it because this is a lot. This is a lot.
Yeah.
This breaks a paradigm. It was a lifestyle that I was living, okay?
Mhm.
And now I'm not living in that concept, and that is life changing. Life changing.
I could imagine.
Yep. So what happened is that she was kidnapped, all right, and that was to control her nation, her nation, and
Mhm.
she was the chief's daughter, and Pocahontas was her nickname. She has a different name, and I'm not aware of it right now, so I don't feel that's fair. And then, like, I wish I had all my references so that way everybody could have them. And so maybe what I'll do is I'll go and I'll look up some links and put them into the chat.
Yeah, that would be great. Yeah.
Yeah. And so they kidnapped her, and then she was sexually assaulted. There were reports of that, and it's documented. And then she was held prisoner, and then they took her to the UK. All right. And they made her, well, they made her marry, or she was sold to uh, um, a, a guy who was there, and he got her pregnant with a child, and then they converted her to their Christianity, dressed her in their version of like all of the period clothing that would be white, all of the colonial clothing, all right, and paraded her about as transformed, and so she became the emblem of what the savages needed to become. And this is the propaganda that was perpetuated in the UK, so that they could create that belief system that you can go to the United States and everybody is coming around and we have everything under control. And she was very, and it was all documented. It's all documented. And what happened is that, pardon me.
Wow.
She asked, she had continued to ask, and she wasn't the only one that was taken, but she is the most documented. So she had asked if she could go and visit her family in the, back in Turtle Island. And it was no for a long time. And then all of a sudden they said yes. And so that was like one day. And then the next day she died. She had consumption, which was tuberculosis, is what they said. But there was a lot of poisonings that were happening in that day and age.
Wow.
That they call that, because look how long ago it was. Look at, there's no, and you're just going to pay. And so you're just going to, and it's all being handled already. Okay.
Wow. Yeah.
Right. Okay. And so all of that information that shifted, well, it shifted everything. It shifted everything. It let me know I have so much, because like the first things that I felt about that was like shame. I was so ashamed. Ashamed. I was so ashamed for not knowing, that ignorance, right? And I was so ashamed. And so now I'm understanding that trigger is my right now trigger. I'm feeling shame for right now, not for who I was before, just the moment before of knowing, right? I'm standing, and now I'm going through all of my child's, right?
Yeah.
Oh man.
So then is it shame because also well, you said right now. Do you think there's like a part of you that feels connected to the people who did that to her? Like
yes.
even the white
most definitely, because my dad was English, all right, and Scottish and Welsh, all right, and all of this. And so I have a lot of ancestry in the Isles, all right, in many of the Isles. And so that is where I finally connected to my heritage, to where I felt ancestrally connected to the earth, to where my work now feels very, very in alignment. And man, so what it did for me was it allowed me to come to this understanding that I'm still white. I'm still white, and I'm a part of all of that, because that's what I'm going to stand in front of, because that's what I'm hoping to change. That's like what I'm hoping to change globally, is that isolation and separation of knowledge. And it gives like knowledge such different reflection, right?
I'm curious too, like as you sit with shame, right? Like in the moment, what other feelings arise? It feels like shame is like the core, but is there any like stems from it? Like I'm curious, like is forgiveness one of them?
Oh yeah. It takes what it takes to move from one focus into the next focus. And so I have I have understandings that I'm processing. And I look at my behaviors around me, like whatever it is that I'm doing, what am I practicing? And if I'm
Yeah.
on my phone and I'm gaming, right? I know that I'm in my escapism practice, right?
Okay.
And that means I'm internal. So I need to look to see what I'm processing so that I could be intentional, and then I can allow it to really matter to me, right? And so those are different things. So I look at things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I wanted to say her name. I believe this is her name, Mataka, but for Pocahontas.
Oh, oh,
I would love to share her name since we're talking about her,
yes,
just to add like respect
yes.
or like acknowledgement. It's crazy because it's like I've never known that. Like I've looked her up before, but I've never known to the extent of like how you're sharing it.
It is, it is incredible.
You
It
know, and
is
just like, I love the movie.
incredible.
Pocahontas is my favorite movie out of all the Disney movies, but
Uh-huh.
I think because she's an indigenous woman who's so connected to nature.
Exactly. Exactly. And so everybody asks for representation, but it's going to be through the lens of an intention. It's meant to be
Yeah,
that way because there's so much that's tied into the story that's being created for you to live.
yeah, okay. How do
So
you think that,
here you
like
go. Here you
about the
go. Let's see. Share screen.
crazy, she died at 20 years old or something like that, around there.
Right?
So, yeah.
Yeah. Exactly. Oh, she was
It was a technology,
1596 to 1617.
yeah, 20 to 21.
Wow.
Oh my god, Lucinda, you're gonna have to go to England.
She- Yes, I know. My son already told me. And you know what? Okay, so here's the crazy part, okay? The
Uh-huh.
guy the guy who was experiencing all of that notoriety because she was on his arm, right? And she had his son, okay?
Yeah, yeah.
He went ahead when she died, and I think he sold off or he got rid of that son. Yeah,
Oh
so I don't know the whole story, right? But I would definitely love to, like, yeah, that would be lovely.
oh my god.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Isn't that crazy? It shifts everything about
wow.
your life. It'll shift everything about your life because you were given a version and you were
Yeah,
given it in school.
yeah,
And you were given it in a movie,
yeah,
right? And it was done in a very mentally, emotionally, intelligently connected,
yeah,
like
um,
neuro linguistic programming way. Okay.
yeah,
And then brought into a sensory aspect so it could feel real to you,
yeah.
right? And it has to hit. So there's like a
But, you
lot
know,
of
it's
subliminal aspects.
it's crazy because it's like, yes, it goes to the part where we feel it as real, especially when we're kids, and I think that's the thing that fucks us over because as we get into adulthood, we're seeking for that same feeling that we got from, let's say, like, the Disney movies of the love and the butterflies and all this other stuff, and then you
Right.
grow up and you realize, like, "Oh, shit, like, that's not entirely real like when we were kids." I remember, like, watching the Disney movies and always, like, focusing myself on, like, the prince, right? Like, "Oh, like, that love, and, like, they come to save you, and
Oh,
you
yes.
princess," right? And
I'm
then
a damsel.
yeah, and then just being an adult and realizing like, oh no, like that's not how it works. But then what else do you use as a reference? It like
Right.
changes your whole mindset. Like you have to work through it.
Right. I
And I
think
think some
that
adults feel
because
safer
they're
too.
what?
I
That
think
again?
some adults, like, if they're not, like, very reflective or if they're not in that space of, like, growth, I think they stay in there, and they just, like, hop from one partner to the next, feeling like that high, and then the high is over, onto the next one.
They
Yeah.
do patterns?
Patterns, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. I think that I think that we stay in patterns because we'll create an intention so that we can have an experience. And then we'll stay in the pattern until we are tired of it. And then
Yeah.
when we're tired of it, we'll start to insert stuff that makes us not like it. We'll look for evidence not to be there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm still curious about your shame.
Okay, but I'm curious. I'm curious about what your shift was. What's your shift? Because like when we're sitting here talking, they're telling me that you have had substantial shifts, like substantial shifts, like
Yeah.
like when like when you were a child and you went from knowing a certain structure, and then all of a sudden it was not that anymore, now it was this. That's a huge integration, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And so it doesn't have to be that big, right?
Mhm.
But we have so many to choose from,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And depending on how safe we're feeling about what we want to open up to, right?
With me, I'm like, "I'll share everything you want me to share." I always feel safe.
Well, shame,
But
shame is something that I allowed myself to feel. The reason was because it was a highly charged emotional memory in my body.
yeah.
So allowing me to feel that charge and allow me to sensorily reduce that charge until it became not inconsequential, but understood. Because
Understood.
you come to an understanding that you're part of all that. Then the
Yeah.
cell memory, the cell can die. It doesn't have to have that big charge anymore. It doesn't have to be that stagnant energy. It doesn't have to create those pockets of pain that I feel, right?
Yeah. Well, I was
Yeah.
gonna ask you too with, like, I'll totally answer the question with shame. Do you see it in any way connecting back to different parts of your childhood that
Oh,
may
all the way around,
that
all the
maybe,
way around.
like, wasn't connected necessarily to the white or the privilege, but just, oh, like, shame has been living in you for a long time,
Oh,
right? And
yeah,
now there's this thing that's popping up in your life, and it's triggering all of the stories and all of the feelings you've ever had with it.
absolutely, absolutely, and that right there, that is so telling, right? So when shame came up, shame hit like every aspect of the children that I've healed inside of me, and the
Mm,
angry teenager that I've listened to, and
uh,
the young adult that made all those choices, and then that determined, hell-bent, oh my God, person, right? And now this person who is in a different frame, right? That has more grace towards self. I have more grace towards self. I'm more
yeah,
receiving of that. So I'm allowing myself to feel things that I wouldn't have allowed myself to feel because the charge was
yeah,
too directive for me. It told me too much about how I had to act, about what I had to do. And even when you go into those suppressions of
mhm,
experiences, that causes you shame because that's why you don't share. And when I found like program taught me you're only as sick as your secrets. And so I was
ooh,
like, oh, snap, because that helps. Doesn't that help? You're only as sick as your secrets because you're holding on to the
wow,
poison of whatever the resentment is, of the guilt, the shame. And for a long time, I wouldn't admit to regret or remorse.
okay.
No regrets, right? Right? How many
Yeah,
people live like that? How many people live like that? Lots. lots,
Mm.
because we're trying to give ourselves permission for the choices that we made. And in order for us to do that, we have to reconcile that each experience is apples and then oranges. There's no comparative. They're two separate aspects, and you're learning in both aspects.
Yeah.
And and just stuff like that, I guess. I don't know. With you, okay, you have taken trips by yourself, right? And
Yeah.
those are very, that is a very open arena of change,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so,
I went to dinner last night with one of my friends. It was her birthday, and we were actually talking about this, me and one of her friends, about traveling alone. And I was telling her that I didn't grow up with it. Like that was never a thing of traveling by yourself.
mm,
But one of an old friend and I, we went to study abroad in Italy, and I kept seeing people traveling by themselves, and it was so normal. Like, meeting a person and they're like, "Oh, yeah, I just graduated, college. I'm out on a trip on my own, just, exploring before I go back to the busy world." And I remember it was at a train station, the way that she talked about it felt so normal. It's like, "This is normal for you? Like, okay." Or and then that's when I decided to do a trip by myself the following year to Cancun. But again, it's like in those spaces, it felt like it was pushing the grain. And not too long ago, I was like really, really proud of myself. I did a podcast on like turning 30. And my friend was asking me questions, and I started to tear up because I'm like, man, like going through certain stuff, even as simple as like traveling by yourself, was so hard in the moment because it's like you have to stand by yourself. It's like I saw people and I experienced it from their eyes for a glimpse of a time, came back home, had the desire. Now I'm booking my own ticket, and everybody else in my life is telling me how it's dangerous, how I shouldn't do it, like if I had any friends, like if I was okay, right? Like so many fears. And to stand alone and be like, I'm gonna do this no matter what, like that shit's hard. Like that shit's really hard. And then I did, and doing the thing and then seeing how other people are still doing it and still so normal, and coming back home and being like, "Hold on, like, why am I taking advice or listening to fears when you haven't really done them yourself?" Like, like when I was in Cancun, like I made really good friends, and yeah, like that's been a big one that
that was great. That was great.
yeah, like yeah, I remember being in Cancun and meeting people from Australia and just like Europe, and again, it was so normal to just be traveling with their backpack. And again, like that fueled my desire to go and move abroad to Vietnam.
Oh, oh, wow. Wow.
So it
What
was
was that like? So you're talking about more shifts. That
yeah,
must have presented like a lot of shifts, because that's a huge shift right there, that you stepped outside of what somebody else's conditioning and
yeah,
opinion was providing to you in a perception.
yeah.
That's
Even going abroad too, same thing, right? Like my parents were like, "Why do you want to go?" Like it was super sweet too because they offered to pay a portion of going back to school to get my master's. And I was like, "No, no, no." I was like, "That's not what I want. Like you guys don't understand. Like I want to leave. I want to experience a different culture." And at some point, they were like, "Why would you wanna go to, like, a third world country? Like, we're in America." It's like, "You don't understand." And I remember my boss at the time I was working at a bank, super
okay.
sweet boss, like, really good job, and I told him that I wanted to leave, and he printed, I'm not kidding, like, a packet of how going to Vietnam was dangerous and living was dangerous.
Oh,
And he freaking highlighted, "Look it, be still. Look it, like, you're gonna get food poisoning." And I remember him giving it to me, and I'm just like, this gives me, like, dad vibes. Like, my dad didn't even do that, right? But I also felt so proud because I left and I threw it in the trash outside the building. Like, I didn't even check it because I was like, "That's not mine, like, that's not gonna be my story." So the next day, he came up and he was like, "So did you get a chance to look through the packet?" And I was like, "No, I threw it away." And he looked at me and he just walked away. You know, and I wish I could go back now and be like, you know what? It was a huge success. You know, that's not mine.
I found me
Yeah, and like if
outside of your lens.
yeah, and if anything, like going abroad brought me more into my own journey with spirituality, you know, and connection with yourself, and because there was a lot of prayer when shit would hit the fan, like I can't contact my parents, I can't contact my friends. There's a huge hours of a difference. Let me just pray about it. You know?
That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. There's
Yeah,
like there's these beautiful moments that you get to connect with your inner world and source of life, right? So
yeah,
your divine source of life, whatever that looks like to you.
and
And
even
when
now
you
yeah, yeah.
go ahead, and even now,
No, like, even now, it's still like that because that's the traveling's, like, the time where I felt, like, the most free and the most myself and the most connected to source. So even now, it's like, how can I go back to that? And just recently, like, one of the things that I'm realizing that I'm living too much in the past, right? And I have to mentally, I think, retrain my brain to be more present or to think in the future, you know?
there,
Like
yeah. So what we're all doing right now, what everybody is doing as a collective, we are being triggered by the external world. So we're doing the trigger of right now by what's going on. And then we're doing the past trigger of what's coming up. And then we're trying to sit in both of those charges and not transfer it anywhere when we're um, in these spaces to where we understand, right? And
yeah.
in that, we're holding a collective energy of trauma.
Mhm. So it still goes
So
to collective energy.
it's just, and that's just a concept. That's
Yeah,
just, you can look at it this way. There's many different ways to look at it, right?
yeah, yeah,
Many different ways to look at it. For
yeah,
me, when I came into the metaphysical world, I got a better language
uh-huh,
to understand the world around me. And when I was in a practiced or a formed practice, right, in different areas, right, I was
uh-huh,
given tools that let me navigate like my thoughts and my emotions. And you don't get to have a book or a manual or anything like that that tells you, well, this is so if you're experiencing this emotion, go over here, and this is how
no,
you
yeah,
that's not how it's going to work. So
um,
until you show up in that moment and have that experience, that's when you start that process. And that
yeah,
process makes it internal.
yeah.
Like
I would
when, go ahead.
I was gonna say, like, traveling's done that so much too. Like, I was telling my partner and just yesterday too at the dinner table how when I was traveling by myself, a lot of feelings came up. And it was this like I was telling my partner the other day and my again, the girl, how I went to India too, right? Like when I was in Vietnam, I went to India and something had happened and there was like a lot of adrenaline and like I felt unsafe, but I put my ground and all this stuff happened. When I got to the hotel, I just started to cry. And my first thought and my first feeling was, man, to my ex-boyfriend of 5 years, why did you leave me? Like if you didn't leave me, we would have been doing this together, or I would have been with you. And it was so odd because it's like, we broke up, like, 3 years ago, like, why am I crying about it right now? Like, why is that thought of, like, you left me here when I'm the one that also broke up with you? And, like, all I could really do is just, like, sit with it and cry about it, right? And it's like, again, like, there's no person, there's no tools, like, there's no book to tell me how to go through it, just sit and cry, you know? And then later, like, when I reflected back, it's like, "Oh, I never got to grieve or process the breakup of the 5-year relationship." So that's why now that I was alone and things were just like how you said, triggers pop up and now they're putting you into the past, right? To like process them or to feel them.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, so I was just, when we become aware of like those understandings, right? Where we're like, oh, this is about that, and then this. Then
Yeah.
eventually, so what I was talking about originally about TikTok was that I didn't want to be white for a really long time. Like
Uh,
most of my life, I have not wanted to be white,
yeah.
only because I was surrounded by different cultures. And I really hungered for what I felt they had in their families. And it didn't feel like a mom and a dad and a
Mm,
car and everybody. It didn't feel like that. It felt like a connectedness. But I
yeah.
was drawn to that. So I was focused on that. That's what I was looking for when I was a child. So as I was growing up, that's how it kind of looked for me. And then, yeah, I don't know. I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful that we have these open conversations and
Me
that
too.
we,
I
right?
I learned so much too, right? Like even
Me
earlier when you were
too,
saying
me
about
too.
regret and it's like there's an energy charge and you were like so you mentioned something on the lines of like accepting regret and because we we want to be in the space of no regrets. In like
Well, we want to give ourselves permission, and we don't know that's what it is that we want. So permission and acceptance are kind of the same, but before we make the decision, we're in this trepidation, and so we're trying to give ourselves permission to change or challenge or move through the resistance that we're feeling in the moment to have that paradigm shift.
yeah.
So we don't
When you
really
were sharing
recognize that.
when you were sharing it, I had this feeling of like, oh, there are people, I'm pretty sure even for myself, where it's like no regrets, right? Because you want to make sure that you live your life, maybe the illusion of like choice,
Well,
right?
so for me, when I was saying no regrets, I was washing my behavior. I was washing my behavior. There's different ways of focusing that particular phrase, right? Whereas if you are, I want to live with no regrets, then your behavior is going to be different. You're going to live and
Yeah,
be in a different principle, in a different actionable aspect.
that's also going
Whereas if it
present moment.
exactly. So rather
I
than asking for permission, you ask for forgiveness,
yeah,
right? So
yeah,
that mentality is what I had. And that isn't necessarily either. I don't have to ask myself or give myself either, but
yeah,
I will tell myself that in order to have an experience.
yeah, yeah. I wanted to add to something too, because I know we have like a couple like whatever.
You're good. We're
I
having
want
a nice time.
I wanted to add to the question, like, what's the most recent truth self-discovery that got challenged from your upbringing?
Okay.
In my moment now, it feels like I'm learning my relationship with anger. Like, I think growing up, anger, let's say anger was like its own persona. I had this feeling of what it was and how to react to it, and it was just so inherent to who I was slash am because I'm working on it. And right now, it's like, "Oh, hold on. It doesn't have to be this persona. It could be a different way." And it has been challenging because, 1, it's one of those where it's you saw it, you embodied what you grew up with, and now you're trying to change the energy and react differently and be different. And it's always, like, just trying to catch yourself even with your thoughts. Right? And the other day I was listening to Ram Dass, and this one's like the biggest one that's hit so far is he was with his guru, and the guru was love everybody and tell the truth. And Ram Dass was, well, the truth is I don't love everybody. Like it's like a contradiction of telling the truth and love everybody, but I don't. And Baba was, you have to let go of your anger. And Ram Dass was like sharing, okay, like what he meant by that is we have this perception of we have to work through it, we have to process it, we have to see where like everything comes from. And Ram Dass was, that's not what Baba meant. Baba meant let go of it. like let go of it. And again, Ram Dass was like, what do you mean? Like, I'm trying to work through it, and it just hit. I've heard of this talk before, but it didn't hit the way that it did this time, you know? And it's like, oh, like I don't have to sit with my anger and like journal it out and be like so pissed and like write the red or like do the, punching matches. There's a part of me that can let go of it and it be okay. So
Well,
I'm
what you've done is you have, through all of the actions that you have taken and through all of the physical aspects of choosing to sit in the energy of it, you have given yourself satisfaction and held the charge until it has lessened. And
yeah,
it's understandable now, all of the emotions. It's okay for you to have all the emotions around that. And
yeah,
that's what takes place. And that's what you've done for yourself. You've held yourself so sacred and so marvelously that now you understand that it's a choice. Anger is a choice. And you
yeah,
had to come out of the contrasts so that you could get to the center and understand that. Yeah,
yeah.
that's it.
Even
Great
it
job.
resonated too because Ram Dass was saying like anger is. He said something along the lines of like anger means that you're right. Like anger comes through as like you're being justified. And then I was thinking of the times that I've been angry recently, and I'm like, oh yeah, like I'm angry because I'm right. Like I'm trying to prove a point. Like I'm reactive because I'm trying to prove my point and like what just happened, right? So it just gave like a totally different perspective and like of course I think I'm still human, so I think there's gonna be moments where I'm like angry and I'm gonna wanna like journal it out. But recently, it's been a feeling of, can I let go of that? Yeah, I can let go of that. And I think the the wanting to be in, like, peace and love has become so much bigger than wanting to be in anger and wanting to process it and wanting to get, like, my voice, like, heard. Like, you understand it? Like, "Okay, cool, you know what I mean then." It's like, "No, hold on, like, it's something so little, like, I don't even care if you understand it, like, can we go back to love?" Now, so I think that's what I'm learning now, where I think growing up, my even to this day, like, I think my mom holds a lot of anger, and I'm seeing it, and I've gotten, like, the other side of it, and it's like, "Oh, I don't wanna turn into that person, and I can see how I can," you know? So I think that's, like, my answer for that question.
That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Yeah. That's cool.
Yeah,
Thanks
you like
for
that, huh? That was good, huh?
yeah.
Technology.
I know earlier when you put up, like, the Pochonatas, I was like, "Oh, I love technology."
Right? Oh, yeah, and that is just it is so, like, it was so telling to me, and I was just so blown away. I was just so blown away, and so, yeah, you're right, all those triggers, because the triggers, they'll close, cycles or patterns that you had because it'll collapse what a reality was to you. And so it'll collapse that reality. You'll have the information of that reality and that experience, and then it'll create disparity in this new paradigm. And that's what you will resolve, shift,
Mm,
come into an understanding of. And you are that. You're all of that. And when you move into that understanding, it's easier to allow yourself to have had the experience with all the information you had in that moment, and
yeah,
now you're moving here. But once you move here, there's a level of accountability that comes along with it, right?
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right. So with all this new knowledge, right, you're going to start treating people differently. You're going to have a different a different method, a different message, a different concept, and you'll feel maybe more like you would like for more people not only to know that, but to really reflect on the knowledge that they do have, that they're using in a foundational way. And where did it come from, right? Where's your information coming from?
Yeah. Yeah. I can feel my presence change a little bit. I'm pretty sure because I've also been learning just resting, like, allowing myself just be, right? I don't know if I told you, like, I had a therapy appointment a couple weeks ago, and, like, I don't I'm always, like, in this go, 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 like, working on my podcast late at night, like a late, like night owl, like all this stuff. And I went to this therapy appointment and she had me lay down and she touched me and she was like, "Oh," she's like, "You're running on adrenaline all the time." And again, it was like another like, "Oh shit, so those are not my strengths? Like that's adrenaline?" Like, and I'm pretty sure it's both, right? But this whole time I'm like, those are my strengths. I can be up all night, like I can be wake up early, I can work through it, push through. And when she said that, I was like, "Oh, no, like I just like that's not healthy."
Oh,
It's just funny
uh-oh,
because
new
around the
boundaries are coming in. New boundaries are coming in.
Yes, exactly, because around the same time when you and I had another Sunday live, and you were like, "Do you know how many times I've closed the shop because I wanna rest?" It was, like, around the same time, and I was like, "Oh, shit, that's that." Like,
Yeah, yeah, 'cause
so
it really is very intense. It's very intense in our lives. It's very intense energetically, and if you're paying attention to like too much physicality, you're going to feel very dense. Like everything moves slow and it needs to be so much faster. And I'm not going anywhere. And then when you pull some of your energetic focus into like your mentality, if you're too far in there, you start
yeah,
to have poor experiences and this story changes. So you're looking for a balance, right?
yeah,
You're looking for a balance of your connection out here to the connection here. And this connection is your earth connection,
yeah,
right? So grounding is really big right now.
yeah.
Grounding's really big right now. That's what I would suggest for every mofa here.
Yeah, ground.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Okay, so I want to pull a rune. Is that all right? A rune for the week? Would you
Mhm.
like that?
Yes.
They said pull a rune. I'm like, sure.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, they told me that we could do like music and how it changes our perception too. We could talk about that.
Oh, that'd be a good one.
Uh-huh. Okay, let's see. Ooh, ooh, oh, okay. So here is the rune. The rune is fertility.
Ah,
Let's see. It has, I want to
love
show
that.
you. Yes, exactly. It has two X's, an X on top and an X on bottom.
And then like a triangle. Not a triangle, yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Is it a triangle? It's not a triangle, a
you know
diamond.
what? I could show you.
It's a
Right
diamond.
here. It is this one. It is this one right here. This one.
Okay.
So it's two X's. All right. And it represents fertility. Let's see. It, fertility.
Asian.
Well, we're spring. We're in mid spring right now. We're in
Oh,
mid spring right now, right? So fertility, new beginnings, Ing. It's Ingus, the hero god. All right. This rune is akin to the moon.
oh snap.
And we have the new moon approaching on the 8th for Taurus. Okay. So this is a very impactful moon to really set your intentions by. All right. Okay. Oh, the intuitive part of our nature with its urge toward harmonizing and adjusting in the sphere of personal relationships.
Oh.
Ingus embodies the need to share, the yearning to be desired, to search after similarities. The completion of beginnings is what Ingus requires. Drawing this rune may mark a time of joyful deliverance, of new life, a new path, a
Mhm.
rune of great power. Receiving it means that you now have the strength to achieve completion, resolution, from which comes a new beginning. Above all, completion is crucial here. It may be timely that you complete some project now. Yes. If so, don't you feel that way? Like it has to happen now, right? If so, make that your first priority. Perhaps a difficult state of mind can be clarified or resolved. The appearance of this rune indicates that you must fertilize the ground for your own deliverance. All things change, and we cannot live permanently amid obstructions. Ingu signals your emergence from a closed chrysalis state. As you resolve and clear away the old, you will experience a release from tension and uncertainty. You may be required to free yourself from a rut, habit, or relationship. From some deep cultural or behavioral pattern. What the fuck did you just do?
Wow.
Woo!
Those
Some
ones teary-eyed.
quite
Wow.
proper to the self you are leaving behind. Peace, bitch. Okay. The time of birth and yet movement that is timely leads out of danger. The time has come to enter the delivery room.
Oh my goodness.
The cycle runes, Ingu's counsels preparation, being centered and grounded, freeing yourself from all unwanted influences,
Yep.
and seeing the humor. You are indeed prepared to open to the will of heaven and await your deliverance with calm certainty.
Oh my goodness, Lucinda, that's like I haven't received such an aligned card in a while.
I love it. I love it. It's fucking bomb. Right on.
If it's not too much, can you send that a picture of it?
Oh yeah, I'll send you photos. Yeah, no problem.
Okay, sounds good.
Right.
Yeah, awesome. Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Have a great week. We'll be back next Sunday, right?
Yes, same time. Yeah.
Yay!